We're live.
We're live on Kyle's deactivated Facebook. Your mom will be very excited. My baby boy. Okay, sorry. Okay. Do the thing.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of Adventuring for Mere Mortals. It's Kyle and Trevor here with you, and today we have a guest, Alex VanPelt.
Hey guys.
Cool.
Yeah.
Trev, you've known Alex the longest. So would you like to do the introduction?
Yeah, sure. So Alex, he went to high school with me. So we've been hanging out for a while. Alex was one of my good best friends there in high school. We played basketball together. We kind of did a lot of stuff together. But it all started the first day of freshman year. It turned out so Alex came from a different school that feeds into our high school. And I think I was the only person that Alex knew at the high school that we had met very briefly. So first day, he's following me around like a little puppy. And I guess it never stopped, really. He's just following me around. He wants to hang out with me.
No, it was nice, comforting to have someone you recognized and know. It's like, hey, we crawled through a cave together, back in July. Like, I'm just going to do what you do. Let's go. And yeah, been doing it ever since. And it's been great.
Yeah, and I started dragging Alex on my random trips. Like one of my favorite ones was ended up going out to the Black Hills, but it was just a random summer. And out of the blue, I was like, I want to go to the Black Hills. Who could go with me? I called it, hey, Alex, what are you doing in a week? You want to go to the Black Hills for a week? And
that is exactly how I remember it as well. Like I'm sitting there, it was like a Sunday night or something. And you're like, hey, do you want to drive to South Dakota on Thursday? And like, yeah, okay, yeah, why not?
Went and had a great time.
Yeah, that was actually my first road trip. So that was like kind of the bar I had to meet for everyone subsequently.
Yeah, it's going to be a reoccurring theme. We're just going to bring people on that I drag on trips with me, and they somehow enjoy it, and then they come again and again. So, yeah, I guess that's a good enough short little intro on Alex. Let's do a recap what we've been up to since last episode. Kyle, you want to start it off?
Sure. Let's see. Oh, I went skiing in Reno, in the Tahoe area, more specifically, Heavenly. That was an adventure. We went up Saturday morning, and they had a wind hold on the lifts. If you buy a pass, and they issue it to you, apparently it's good for 5 days or until they scan it. So the guy was like, I wouldn't ski today. So we just went and had a very late breakfast and a couple Bloody Marys, and then came back the next day and absolutely crushed it. I think it was like 83,000 vertical feet that we covered. At lunch we were sitting there and I was like, man, I need to get my ski legs underneath me because I'm just too exhausted. And he was like, oh, well, I think I may have found the reason why. We were at like 50,000. We were going for 100, but at some point the legs give out.
Yeah, dude, that's crazy.
Yeah, so did that, and then let's see. Oh, went to the Tetons, did a little cross country skiing in the front country. I only got about 3 miles in, and then I stopped at the glacier viewpoint and to get a drink of water, and I turned around and I watched the valley closing in on me with clouds, and I was like, oh, I'm just gonna turn around. And so I did. And skied back, and it was absolutely miserable because it was like 35 mile an hour sustained winds. Absolutely miserable. And when I got to the trailhead, they have a ranger station there, and she's like, you're the only sensible person that I've seen yet. She goes, it's only going to get worse. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I get a gold star.
Yep. So I can't think of anything else that I did. Trev?
A couple things. So I mentioned in the last episode that I was going to have ACL surgery. So had ACL surgery and to fix my completely torn ACL and fix 2 tears on my meniscus. Got that done. Been on crutches ever since. Actually, yesterday. I'm they gave me the clear to start weaning off my crutches. So I'm slow over the next like 2 weeks. I'll be weaning off my crutches, and I have a big brace that I have to wear. So I'll unlock my brace so I can move my knee. But PT's going well, and well, it's still going to be months and months before I get back to 100%. But I should be walking like a normal person here soon, which is good. And my knee doesn't hurt that much. It gets tired at the end of the day, but it's good overall. Some other news: I am actually going to be moving here in like a month or two. So my wife got a new job with a company in Normal, Illinois. So,
ooh, congratulations!
It's exciting. We're going up to try to find a house this weekend, and we put our house on the market yesterday. And the housing market down here is hot. So there's just been like in the last 24 hours, at least I think 5-6 viewings, and there's 5 or 6 more over the weekend that I know about right now. So it's good that we're not going to be here because we have to leave the house every time they do. So, but yeah, that's exciting. It's a new, exciting venture, and Morgan's really, really excited about the job. It's an awesome company. I won't go into all details, but it's pretty exciting. Yeah. More domestic stuff, not any like adventure-y things, because I can't like all my updates aren't going to be adventure-y for months and months.
Trevor's going to be like, I rode a bike today.
Yeah, and, it was exciting.
He's going to be an armchair adventurer.
Right. Yeah. So Alex, what have you been up to, man?
Gotta be honest, 2021 was a pretty quiet year for me, other than getting married. So, spent 6 months, getting ready for the wedding stuff, and then moved into a new house. So I'm actually, calling in from, central Kentucky. I'm in like the bluegrass, like bourbon and thoroughbreds are all over around my house. So haven't been doing much other than, just kind of the domestic thing, happily married. Got a couple trips planned, hopefully this year if they pan out. But been a pretty quiet year. I was a little disappointed I didn't get to go with you guys back in November. So Kyle, I don't know what you guys came up with for a trail name for Trevor whenever you guys were through hiking, but I make a motion that we change it to Hopalong. At least
Actually, we decided the commissioner.
Oh yeah, commissioner, because I always tell people what to do
and settles all debates.
You do come in pretty hot with the spreadsheets on whenever we're playing.
I do.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's my gift. It's my gift.
Sheets. We're gonna call him Sheets. Like I think.
I actually kind of like that. Okay, I'm not mad at that one. I'm not mad at that one. Okay, well,
yeah.
I think it's about time to get into our main topic. So when I approached Alex about coming on the podcast, I was like, what is unique about the things Alex doing? What I came up with is Alex has been on a lot of solo trips and a lot of long solo trips. So,
yes. Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people that are like starting out to do things, a lot of times maybe you don't have a bunch of people that want to go to you. Maybe you just don't have my gift of just pulling people in to go on random trips with you. Or other people, or your friends just don't have the flexibility that you do to be able to go on trips. So I thought Alex is a perfect person to kind of bring in to talk about his solo trips, and we can get a little background about how we got into going to the outdoors and all of that. But so I guess we can start out with how did you like get into going outdoors and being into outdoor things? I guess that's a good place to start.
So. For me, I think I kind of got it from both sides of the family tree. So growing up, from the time I'm very little, like some of my earliest memories are dad being outdoorsy, hunting kind of guy. So always out, bow hunting for deer, turkey hunting with him, fishing, things like that. So we were tramping around the woods quite a bit, a lot of miles of turkey hunting. Looking for mushrooms, generally just enjoyed being outside. So from him, I learned a lot of the things like, tree ID, how to identify some edible mushrooms. Cause, Trevor mentioned earlier, like from Southern Illinois originally. So what are some of the things you can and can't eat there? But then, from mom's side, mom is kind of an adventurous person, but she's not really an outdoorsy person. So what mom was more into was like the travel side of it. So we tried not to repeat vacation spots, tried to always go somewhere new. Mom was big into like the experiences thing. So it's like, hey, we're gonna go to the Smoky Mountains, or we're gonna go to, Louisiana or whatever. And it's like, once we arrive, we're not eating any chain restaurants. We're not gonna, we're gonna do some of the touristy things, but we're really just gonna go and kind of, experience what New Orleans throws at us, or something like that. And so like a lot of the outdoorsy stuff came from Dad, but a lot of the travel, the sightseeing, the experiences stuff came from Mom's side. And then I got really lucky when I was in college. I actually was a forestry major. I was studying to be a resource manager, hoping to get a Forest Service job one day. And so I got a summer job for them for years, actually building trails and things like that. We were on the wilderness crew, building trails through some areas there in Southern Illinois with picks and shovels and, buckets and carrying rocks uphill all day and stuff like that. And my weird brain was like, this is amazing. I love it.
No, but it sounds like you've kind of melded the two different sides of your family into one Alex thing.
Yeah.
So that's really cool, man.
My thing is still very different than a lot of my family, but I think they kind of get it, because they both are looking at my trips and like, yeah, I wouldn't like this, but this sounds awesome.
Yeah, I know when we first started. So Alex and I have been on multiple different trips. I know your parent, your mom especially, has told me multiple times. She's like, "I'm so glad you're going with Alex." It's because if you weren't going, he would just go by himself anyway. So I think going with me a few times, that made him more comfortable with you going out, and that really kind of leads into you doing a lot of your solo trips.
Yeah. It's one thing to travel with somebody where, if something bad were to happen, you would have somebody who could respond, or somebody who could, run down the trail and get help or something like that. So it is a little bit of a different experience to kind of do these things solo. So, whenever we kind of get into it a little more, I kind of want to share some of the things I've learned. Because, I definitely don't want any, 127-hour moments or anything like that. I don't know if I can actually say that. You guys use it on the YouTube or not, but I think a lot of people will understand what I'm talking about. Definitely don't want something like that. I we'll talk about it here, I'm sure, in a little bit. But soloing is definitely different than any group trip I've ever been on.
So I guess I didn't know this, Alex, but I knew that you did solo like road trips and things like that, but have you done solo backpacking trips, or like float trips or anything like that? Like, what type of trips are you doing solo?
Yeah, so a lot of my trips have been more road trips. I try to bake in, some day hikes, some summits on mountains and things like that. I've done a couple where I've had several overnights out in the backcountry, kind of by myself. Doing my own thing, but a lot of it has been more, cross-country journeys where I'm hitting, 3 or 4 national parks or something like that over a set number of days. So that's kind of more my experience. I've not done, Trevor, I think in your first episode, you talked about you through hiked the River to River Trail, and you did it in 5 days or 6 days.
5.5.
Whereas for like the average person, it takes 7 to 10, just depending on how you do it.
Hey, Alex, weren't you on that trip?
I was for a little while. Yeah. And that's actually one of the things I wanted to talk about when you're soloing versus when you have somebody, so on that river to river kind of through hike, my feet got chewed up. At a certain point, I really wasn't enjoying it anymore. And so, I think you guys are calling this, the adventuring for mere mortals. I think that should be a big early takeaway for folks. I hope is that you need to definitely know your limits. At what point are you not really comfortable? Like, you could probably persevere, you would probably be fine, but at a certain point, you need to be able to kind of make that call and say, that's it. I've had enough.
Like you said, it's important to know your limits. And at least in my head, I get very, very stubborn, and I like I kind of enjoy going to the pain cave a little bit. So I will push through those things. But at some point you have to kind of weigh the safety versus like having fun in the pain cave. Because at some point you get your tunnel vision and you just keep going when you really, really shouldn't. Like Kyle made the right decision when he was cross country skiing to turn around, because it would have just been miserable and it could have became unsafe at some point, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And that was something that I'd hope that we could touch on, because I know on my solo trips and things like that, I am much more aware of risk and the risk that I'm taking. Do you have an example of a risk that you might take whenever you're in a group or something type setting versus by yourself?
I do. So Trev was there for this.
My wife doesn't know about this.
No. Okay. Well, I hope she's a listener.
Wait, yeah, she is a listener, right, Trev?
I think so. She's also our unpaid intern. So
yes. Other duties as assigned for no. So I'll give you an example, and this is always kind of been the sketchiest thing that I've ever done in the outdoors. So, Trev, when you were in grad school, you were living up in Evanston. You messaged me and you're like, hey, let's go to Ontario. It's just one state away, essentially. We'll go up there. I've got some sites up there where I've got some of my equipment out. So I was like, great, I'll ride the train up. You drive. It'll be great. And on that train ride up after work, the longer I went through that ride, the worse I started feeling, to the point where I just finally started napping it off. I got there, grabbed my bags, hopped in the car with Trevor, and then I essentially slept all the way to the Canadian border. So
I drove through the night and I got us up there.
You did. You drove through the night. You helped me out a lot, because I would have drove, but I wouldn't have liked it. So we get there, and the first thing on the agenda is we're going to backpack out to this campsite. Okay, so I've been waiting weeks on this. I'm just going to do it. I've got Trev here. So I, throw my backpack on. It was borrowed gear at the time. This was really early before I even started buying a lot of my own equipment. So I am just straight up not having a good time. We're hiking out, and I don't even remember how far we hiked out, Trev, but we eventually reached the campsite, and you're like, okay, we're going to stay here, but I'm going to hike 3 more miles to this cool waterfall. And I'm like, great. And I essentially fell down and went to sleep. Didn't put the tent up, didn't get my bag out, nothing. I was done.
It was a really cool waterfall.
Did his own thing. Really glad you didn't need rescuing, because I would have done it, but again, would have hated every minute of it. And then the next day, woke up and Trev's like, we're going to hike out to this island. Cool. Yeah, let's go. So we're right along the edge of Lake Superior. We hiked out to, I think it was like Devil's Island.
Devil's Chair, I think is what it's called.
Yeah. So we're there and it's beautiful, and I'm kind of feeling better because I have a bunch of ibuprofen in me. And Trevor goes, I kind of want to swim out there, and I'm like, okay, I don't want to be a buzzkill. So we get in the water, me with a fever and chills, and start swimming in Lake Superior, and the water's like, I don't know, 52 degrees, 55 degrees. It's cold. And then halfway across this channel, we realized we're swimming into the current.
Yeah, the current was sweeping us. So we were swimming against the current to try to get out to this little island that had this rock outcropping on.
So we get there, and I think we both kind of looked at each other and we're like, that was stupid.
Yeah.
We also realized we have to get back now. Like, we are as far away from the vehicle as we're going to get. And so I think we lay there and sunned for an hour and a half to kind of get our body temperature up before we jump back in the water.
Get our breath back. But on the way out, I distinctly remember, and I'll remember this for the rest of my life, I was swimming and going, Alex, you need to swim because I will not be able to save you and myself.
Yeah.
It was like I was in decent shape and I was out of breath, and because we were fighting the current, it was really dumb. We should have turned around immediately, but we were dumb and stubborn and young and invincible, at least in our heads.
Well, and that was just it. Is I didn't want to disappoint you on this trip, and I didn't want to, I also didn't want to be left behind. And so I kind of pushed through when I really, looking back on it years later, should not have.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was definitely one of the dumber, sketchier things that I've done in a group that alone probably would have never even hiked to the island, let alone decide to swim there. So
yeah, peer pressure is my magic power.
it doesn't always work. You
Yeah.
climbed up that rock chimney, and
that was on me.
I'm like, this doesn't look like a good idea. I'm going to hike around up to the top, and then all of a sudden, I'm sitting at the top, like, what took him so long? I didn't think it was that far. And yeah, Trev got a little overstretched. So.
Yeah, I made it, but it was sketchy. But yeah, this is like, but like I said, this is when I was young, and in my head I was invincible. I didn't have kids. I didn't have a wife, and dumb mistakes.
I will say, being recently married, it definitely kind of changes the equation for how I do these trips, how I plan them, how I let her know what I'm doing. I kind of always let my folks know, but they kind of trust me enough to where, I'll probably fine. I'll check in every day or so. Whereas she's more anxious is maybe a good word about things like that. So she wants to know, if something were to happen, what trails are you intending to hike that day? So I can at least kind of narrow it down from, hey, he's somewhere in the Tetons to he's on the backside of Jenny Lake or something like that.
And that's the correct way to do it.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Can you walk us through how you plan a trip and then how you check in for people that are thinking about, getting into this, and this is possibly something, because they like to drive and see cool places. I mean, where would you start on this, and how would you set up a hypothetical trip and then execute it?
Yeah. So planning a trip, and then I think your question is more of a two-parter. So letting folks know I don't have an InReach or something like that, Kyle. If I was doing a longer backpacking trip to where I was in an area where self-service was spotty at best. So if I was hiking the John Muir Trail or part of the Colorado Trail or something where it's going to be, consecutive days without cell service or something like that, I would consider buying, if not at least renting one, to have some type of, emergency device where I could, if I needed to bail, I could.
So do you check for cell phone signal? Like, do you, before you leave?
So Verizon actually is the service I use, and they do a coverage map where at least gives you an idea of, where could you send out a text message or something like that? Or, Yellowstone is a great example. When you're driving around, pretty much the only places you're going to get service are going to be, near the park boundaries. Or you can get Wi-Fi at some of the visitor centers or something like that. So
confirm.
So I would definitely check in on places like that where I could hop on Wi-Fi and shoot out a Facebook message. But yeah, I do, when I'm going to be in areas I know are going to have spotty cell service, I try to find one or two places where I can make contact, hopefully every day. If I am going to be in an area where I'm going to have a couple days. So using an example, I did a 3-day, 2-night backpacking trip out to Heart Lake in Yellowstone on one of my first big trips. Just let mom know, like, hey, you're not going to hear from me for the next 2 days. Here's where I'm planning to be. If I don't contact you by, sundown on day 3, that's when you need to start getting concerned and maybe alerting somebody or giving some heads up or something like that. So.
And do you outline what sort of trails you're planning on taking or things like that?
Yeah, I do. So Trev, you are known in our friend group as the master of the spreadsheets. But that's kind of the same thing I do. So I've got a spreadsheet I created early on back in 2016, 2017, when I first started doing my solo trips, to where I basically type it out as a calendar, and every day has bullet points. So driving from camp to my next location. When I get there, here are the 3 things that I'm kind of kicking around doing. So again, you can kind of narrow down if I were to go missing or not check in or something like that. The rangers could drive to those trailheads and check if my car's there. Real quick, easy way to kind of locate somebody. But that's typically what I do is I try to give whomever my back home person is a day by day, just general rundown. Now, I've had trips before, 2017, I was out in Oregon and pretty much everything in the state was on fire. I had 4 days planned in Oregon and every single thing that I had planned to do was closed for burns. So I had to pretty much throw the entire schedule out the window.
Mhm.
So things happen, but at least having a starting point to where hey, he hasn't talked to me in 48 hours. Here's where he was the last 2 days, is really great because um, if something terrible were to happen, minutes can matter. The quicker the Rangers or help can get to you, the better.
Do you ever deviate from your itinerary?
Occasionally. So, I guess this is a kind of a good segue into like how I plan my trips too. So, I even started writing down when I was thinking about this, like, where are some of the places I get my ideas from? And I came up with like photos on Google Map, Instagram,
Instagram.
the recent one is TikTok. I've kind of fallen into travel TikTok world. So I'm like, but yeah, so with my trips, I typically start with like a big picture goal in mind. So a couple years ago, I was like, you know what? I kind of want to go check out the Canadian Rockies. Banff, Jasper, that area, look absolutely beautiful. And I kind of just want to go check it out. So kind of going in, I really didn't know where, what, anything like that. So I start with a big picture and then I'm like, okay, here are my, 3 big things I want to do on this trip. So I want to definitely go check out Moraine Lake. It's very, very beautiful area at sunrise with that, beautiful glacial blue waters and the mountains reflecting. And it was just incredible. So like, I kind of base my trips around like, okay, I definitely want this on the trip. And then I start working into, okay, so if I'm going to do this, kind of how do I need to plan around it? So, your all's first episode, Trev, you talked about getting really lucky, getting the permit for rim to rim to rim. If I get a permit or something like that, I kind of consider that my stake in the ground. I have to base everything around this because I have to be at this trailhead at this time. And so that kind of helps me narrow down what can I actually do. One of my big problems when I plan trips is there's always one more thing. And while I'm out west or on my road trip, I'm like, ooh, it's only 200 miles to Crater of the Moon or something like that, where it's like, I could just zip over there in an afternoon. And then all of a sudden you turn around and it's like, oh man, my road trip is like a month long. I think work is going to be down to me just being like, hey, I'm going to be gone for August.
It's a bad month anyway. You don't need me here.
No. Like typically try to hit the shoulder seasons, June and September. But it just kind of depends. But yeah, so that's kind of how I narrow my trip down to where am I going, kind of what am I thinking, and then again, then you can kind of break it down to okay, I typically it's vacation, so I'm not up at sunrise every morning, so I might have a lie-in one morning or one day I have to get up at 7 to make it to a certain place on time or something like that. So you can kind of start planning your days then around how many miles do you have to travel? How long do you think it's going to take to hike this trail? Things like that. So that's kind of how I start big and kind of narrow it down to what my trips actually end up becoming.
Yeah, and to make it fit other people, it's in your case, you're driving these things. It's all about how much do you want to drive in a day? Because some people like 4 hours and they're just done. They're fried.
Yeah.
You can't do it. Other people, it's like, no, I'm driving 9 hours to get to this place. I want to see this thing. I'm that person. I'm just like, go.
And I'm kind of that way too, Trev, where it's like, hey, I get paid. So I'm a state employee. Like I get paid really well in time off. I don't usually get, I'm not paid as well as I could be in like maybe the private sector for dollars wise. So I can take 2-week long trips and it's not a big deal for my work. And I, usually want to maximize that because, where I'm at in Kentucky, some of the nearest areas where you can go see 3 national parks in a week are going to be like Colorado, Texas, New Mexico border, something like that. I'm on the East Coast, so parks tend to be a little more sparse, and they tend to be, not as large. So if I get out west, I try to want to maximize my time while I'm there. So a lot of my trips, a lot of my big drive days are usually like the first two and then the last two, getting there and getting home. And then while I'm there, I might only drive 40, 50 miles in a day or something like that. I'll spend a lot of time on foot exploring. But yeah, I'll do 1,000 miles that first day usually because I'm not tired yet and I've got a lot of oomph in me yet, and I'll drive from like here to South Dakota or something.
Just crush it.
Yeah, just go.
So
I think the longest trip I did 2,600 miles in 3 days. And that was get up to Jasper. Yeah. And that was a lot. I will be the first to admit. Night 2, I was pretty tired driving in, and there was a moose on the side of the road, and I was doing about 70 across the Trans-Canadian Highway. And that was
you woke up real fast.
I think I'm done for the night. I think I'm going to pull over at the next campsite and set up shop real quick.
Yep, it was a sign.
Yes.
Moose are terrifying. We came up on a moose in a 15-passenger van, and that was like the first time that I had seen one, not in a bog or something like that, standing next to the road. And whenever I looked up at it, that was whenever it was like, oh, this is why people don't mess with them.
Yeah, my first trip I went out to Yellowstone and was there for like a week. And, I did those 3 nights like I talked about in the backcountry. And, Mom, it was really my first solo trip. So she was pretty worried about the typical mom things, bears, other people, things like that. And so she bought me bear mace. And, I'm like, okay, I'll take it, make you feel better, fine. But as I got out there, I'm like, you know what? I'm not nearly as scared of running into a bear as I am a moose. Like, I'm really afraid I'm going to come around the corner and startle a moose. And, yeah, I don't know if I could outrun him.
I've done it.
Yeah, have you?
In Tetons, walking down, what is that trail? I was doing the Teton Crest Trail and coming off through the canyon, and just off the side of the trail. I mean, not even 6 feet.
Yeah.
And walked by, and I kind of like looked over, and he looked at me, and we were both, equally startled.
What are you doing here?
And luckily, we both went in opposite directions.
Yeah.
The younger bull that we encountered further down the trail, that was in the trail, he did the whole eyes rolling back in the head, rocking the horns back and forth. I was with the Romanian Tornado, and she loves taking pictures, and she was snapping photos. And she's like, "What do we do?" And I was like, "We back up the trail now, and we climb up this outcrop." And climbed
you
up.
Stay there. I'm gonna back up.
Yeah.
So we climbed up to the outcrop, and I turn around, and the trail switchbacks around, and I was like, "This will be fine. This will be fine." And he just slowly walked down the trail and kept an eye on us. And then once he was past us, we bolted down and then about 100 yards down the trail, there's another moose, but this one's further away. And, that's where you have all the tourists out there with their camera phone.
Yeah.
Video and snapping photos. And there was a ranger with them, and gave the ranger a heads up. And she was like, "Oh, thank you." She goes, "That's like one of my biggest fears." So it's real. So you prefer to drive, it sounds like. Is there any threshold whenever you decide, well, I'm going to fly it, either in time or mileage?
There hasn't been yet. So again, for me, especially early on, one of my big factors when I first started planning these long multi-week, road trips or something like that, again, state employee, not super well paid. So cost was a big factor. I could fly out there, fly back for about the cost, or maybe even a little less than what it would cost me to drive it. The issue I've always run into, though, is once you get there, then what?
Yes.
I like pretty remote places. So you're automatically talking about renting a car or something like that. So I've always been more drive over fly. The wife, though, she's always kind of flown to her places. So I took her on a trip back in 2019 when we were just dating. And she flew out and met me in Vegas. Well, by then I'd already driven like 3,500 miles or something like that. And it didn't really bother me even then to do most of the driving. But yeah, the one that I think I would consider that I kind of have in the hopper, have been kind of kicking around just big ideas with, would be like Alaska. 4,000 miles over 4 days of driving, and then having to do that when you come back. That's a lot.
Yeah, and depending on where you go, you have to take a ferry, which adds a few days.
Sure.
So.
And that was the one where it's like, on that, I probably would rent a car. I'd probably spring the extra $40 a day or whatever it is and get a car. But, again, for what I've done so far, continental U.S., again, driving doesn't really bother me. I put on a podcast or a book on tape or something like that, and I just kind of zone out. It's not work to me until it's like the last hour of the day or something like that.
Is that the real reason why you or is that one of the primary factors as to why you solo? Is it convenience? Or because you didn't have friends, that could go for that long a time or something like that.
Wow. Going for the jugular.
It's Alex.
So I think my friend group is a little, unusual when you're comparing to most folks because, we really are all over the U.S. Trev was in Louisiana. Doug is up in Indianapolis. Steve's up in, Minnesota. A couple people live near Southern Illinois, but a lot of my really close friends, like after college, we kind of scattered. And so like I didn't have a super great, super tight friend group, into necessarily the type of trips I'm into when I moved to Kentucky. And so that was a little bit of it. Is like, I've got work friends, I've got personal friends or stuff like that, but they don't want to sit in the car for 2,000 miles over 2 days just to go hike up a mountain. That's not really their thing. And so that was part of it. Is like, what? I want to do it, so I'm just going to go. I'm just going to hop in the car and make it happen.
So what do you think are some downsides of going by yourself? Like the flexibility and just going is the positive, but what are downsides?
Yeah. Do you get weird?
Yeah.
I get weird.
You get real weird by yourself?
You do. Yeah. You start doing some odd things. So downside is going to be definitely, again, driving. When you're solo, it's you. So if you get tired or something like that, you've got to factor that in. So there's been times where, after a big hike, I've got to drive 2 hours to kind of be in place for what I really want to do tomorrow. And I've pulled over and taken a 60-minute power nap or something like that, just kind of crash and kind of recharge for what I've got next on my day. So definitely the solo driving is going to be a downside. The other part of it is, I do miss the experience of having somebody there with me. So, Trev, you can kind of attest to this. Kyle, you can too, because, I was there with you guys when we did the rim to rim to rim. Mm-hmm. Sitting around at the end of the day, we're all going through the same things. We're all tired. Our feet hurt. The food is maybe not just hitting right. I really could use a beer or something like that, So the experiences of just sitting there around the fire or sitting there stargazing at night or something like that, is definitely a big thing I miss. I mean, Trev's introduced me to some wild music that I never would have listened to on my own if we weren't sitting over a fire in Yosemite or something like that.
That is a perk of traveling with Trev. We did the same thing after the Foothills Trail. Whenever it was just,
after the Foothills Trail, we put my playlist just every song I've ever told Amazon that I like. It was just, it's quite a crazy thing. But like the loneliness thing, that reminds me of like after when we started the river to river trail, and after a while, like you had your foot issues, so it was just me. By like the second day by myself, I was just like sitting in my tent going, wow, I don't like hiking by myself. Like I was hiking fast. Like during the day, I was fine just because I'm just like go pedal to the metal and I'm going. But at the end of the day, where I'm just like sitting there by myself, I'm like, I want to talk to someone. And there's no one here.
Yeah. So I think part of the reason it doesn't bother me, like I said, I do miss the camaraderie and the hanging out, but at the same time, I try to find little Zen moments. So when I was out at Heart Lake, I'm going to keep using that one. I intentionally picked a campsite where I could have a fire. There's something just really relaxing where you're just sitting there looking into a fire and just sitting around doing nothing for an hour, and like you don't realize how much time's passed. I really like to find a good spot. Got to the lake and realized I was like, you know what? I've only got like another mile and a half to go. Like I'm going to camp here for an hour, and dropped the pack, took the shoes off, and then just kind of sat there with my feet in the water, staring out over this just incredibly beautiful spot. And so I think that's the little things you kind of have to do when you're solo, whereas you're not getting that entertainment from the interaction with somebody else. Kyle, you're absolutely right. When you're out in the woods with somebody in isolation for a while, your brain starts doing some weird things to kind of cope. But when you're going solo, you might have to kind of self-generate those things every now and again. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say it's always fun. But it's always interesting.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Yeah.
For me, with traveling with people, I enjoy sharing in the experience, and actually, if it's their first time there, watching or thinking about looking at it through their eyes. So like the Grand Canyon trip, we had all been there before. But Fudge Round and Section Corner, that was their first time. And I still look at that video of where we blindfolded them and walked them to the rim.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with everyone. It's just, you're speechless because you've seen pictures of it. You know what it's going to look like, but the sheer size of it.
Yeah, your brain can't compute. It's just it's hard to understand without being there.
Well, and that's kind of the neat thing that I've transitioned to in the last 3 years. So met the wife, went on our first date in like January of 2019 or something like that, and in that fall we did this trip where I went out and hit several national parks I've never been to, Big Bend and Guadalupe Mountains and
awesome.
Carlsbad, Saguaro. I kind of did all that little Southwest stuff. But then I picked her up in Vegas and I started taking her to the Grand Canyon or to, we hiked Angel's Landing in Zion. And, that was the thing where it's like, you know what? I've been there. I've been to this exact spot. I knew what it was going to look like. Like, I definitely want to go back for me. But I really wanted to take her and like let her experience that. And so that's kind of the benefit of like, hey, I've done all these really cool things solo. Let's go back and do it again. And like, I can kind of get that same feeling, with somebody else now. And like I said, that's been more of a recent development. We've only done really one of those road trips. But definitely have several more kind of outlined where I definitely want to take her up, to some of the, the big national parks that everybody talks about.
Yeah. My kids are getting close to the age where we're going to start doing some longer trips, like week, 2 weeks with the kids and show them all the national parks. I'm getting really excited for that. Like my son's, he's still a little too young for it. He won't like remember it. My daughter would, but yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that. And Morgan's came on little
you're
things.
Also, I'm sure looking forward. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm sure you're also looking forward to the part where you don't have to carry them anymore. So they're not on your shoulders in a carry-all. Like
I would say the kitty backpack is clutch. I love those things. We have 2 of them because you just put them on and Bryn's heavy. She's like almost 50 pounds now, 45 or so. But just put it on, you go. It's so much faster than dragging them or holding them in one arm.
Right. Yeah. Or like end of the day, they've hiked several miles and they want a snack and
for sure. So I think this is something I kind of want to do with most of our guests to kind of bring, keep us all modest. And I'm going to hopefully keep asking this of every guest. What is the biggest mistake you've ever made in the outdoors?
The biggest mistake I've ever made in the outdoors.
You're still here, so you didn't make the biggest mistake and die. But
right. Yeah. I didn't make that final mistake, but I would say my biggest mistake. So I waited for someone to kind of invite me on a road trip. That is my biggest regret. Kind of looking back. So Trev, you mentioned earlier where you randomly called me. You're like, let's go to South Dakota. To be honest, a trip like that hadn't even really crossed my mind yet. Most of what I had done to that point had been, family vacations and experiences, or, road trips to go see a baseball game in another town, Chicago or, Kansas City or something like that. But when you and I kind of just hopped in the car and, driving 400 miles across South Dakota, we see wall drug ads everywhere where it's like, I don't even know what this is, but I want to stop because they're offering free water and dinosaurs. Like, what is this?
The original clickbait.
Oh man.
Yes, it really was.
Oh man.
I think we saw 3 signs a mile for 400 miles. It was insane.
And I was immediately like, we're not going to wall drug. 2 hours later, Alex is like, we got to go to Wall Drug. I'm like, no, we're not going to Wall Drug. 2 more hours. Come on, Trev, we got to go to Wall Drug. They have free water. I'm like, fine, we'll go to Wall Drug. And Wall Drug was dope. I love Wall Drug. It's great.
It ended up being such a great tourist trap. We spent an hour and a half there, and I really could have spent longer. My regret is I didn't start doing stuff like that in high school, even, or in college when I was in undergrad, and where I really could take 3 weeks off and do it on a shoestring budget or something like that. I waited until I was in my 20s. I would say that was my biggest mistake, is not starting earlier, because that was the thing, is I didn't know where to start. I didn't know where to begin or how to begin. And so, taking that first step kind of intimidated me, I guess. I don't want to get out there and mess up or
as it does for
not
most.
have a good time. Yeah, and that's just it. Is I think that's going to be kind of a recurring theme, especially on your all's early episodes when you're interviewing folks. Is like, just start. It doesn't matter if it goes off without a hitch or if it's an entire, I don't know if you guys allow cursing on this, but if it's an entire shit show or something like that, I eventually had somebody tell me, it's not really an adventure until something goes wrong. So go out, start. If it's not great, do something else. Pivot.
Yeah.
So start. That was the biggest thing, where it's like, man, as soon as I got that first one, Trev, you've even made that joke in the past where it's like, God, I kind of created a monster, because now I'm sending you pictures from the fourth national park on my vacation, and you're in in college or something
desk,
like that.
Or I'm sitting in my desk in my
writing
job.
Python code.
Yeah, Alex has made it almost a career of making me jealous of his trips. So every time he goes on a trip, he's just sending me pictures, or calling me when I'm at work. Calling me 4 hours after my daughter was born. It's like, hey, we're in Rocky Mountain National Park right now. What are you doing?
Did I really do that?
Oh
my God.
Yeah, you and Steve.
You texted me while I was coming out of the park. I forgot about that. But to be fair, Trev's got some really great pictures of me just straight up not having a good time on some of these trips that he's taken me on. Canada when I was sick, or when I had those $50 size blisters or stuff like that. So to be fair, you've kind of put me through my ringers as well.
Yeah. There's definitely a learning curve. You just have to embrace it.
Yeah. And that's it.
And so these big trips, obviously you're not doing them every other month or something like that. So, the whole theme of this is, how do you get outside, just to kind of wrap up, in between those big trips? What type of smaller trips do you do, or even, little weekend things, just to get out and maybe prepare for those larger trips?
Okay. Yeah. Here where I'm at in Kentucky, I'm actually a little lucky. We've got, national forest, and some national geologic areas, not all that far away, hour, something like that. So I end up going out to the Red River Gorge or Daniel Boone National Forest or something like that a lot.
Nice.
There are a couple places here in town. So, my job, I deal with like hydrology and water and things like that. And one of the things that they're pushing is, give rivers room to flood. But the co-benefit of that is you leave all these beautiful areas as parks and walking trails and forests and get those ecological benefits and stuff like that. So there are several of those here nearby that we kind of hit. Recently, in the last couple of years, and in fact, it actually started just pre-COVID, got into like scuba diving. So I've started doing trips like that where on a weekend we'll drive down to Florida and do a couple dives down in some springs and sinkholes and stuff like that. So a lot of that, a lot of just day hikes and things like that. COVID really got me into running, so I've been doing a lot of outdoor running, and that and so I've been doing that. We've got a beautiful park here right on the river that I can run along. It's a couple miles. It's great. So you're right, Kyle. Like a lot of my big trips are more like an every other year kind of thing where I'll go on those, like I said, 2-week trips or something like that. But I still try to get a good road trip in there somewhere. So one year I'll go out to Colorado and meet a buddy and we'll hike for a couple days. Or 2020 we did rim to rim to rim. I was the one who didn't get to go on the whole week long with you guys, but I got to fly out for those 3 or 4 days and do the hike there. So part of it is pick your spots and hit it hard when you can. So that's definitely been what's been successful for me so far.
All right. And then last question for me, Trev, I don't know if you have any more, but you kind of touched on it. You're leaving work for a significant amount of time. I know that at least at the start of trips, I'm a bit apprehensive, being away from work and disconnecting. And the longer the trip is, the more concerned I'm about, oh God, how many fires and what size am I going to have to put out? How do you overcome that obstacle?
So one of my cardinal rules on my trip is I do try to take a hiatus from email and social media and things like that. Pretty much all I do on my phone whenever I'm gone is GPS directions or
Troll
texting.
Trevor.
And definitely troll Trevor. Here's this beautiful picture of me with the Tetons in the background or something like that. So typically what I do, Kyle, is I try to prepare the folks I work most frequently with in advance, going, hey, I'm going to be gone from such and such to such and such date. So if you need help, here's somebody that is kind of adjacent to what I do. So they're not necessarily going to have the answers, but they can at least point you to somebody who might. Or, if it's something major, I'll deal with it when I get back. But I'm very much one of those people where when my feet hit the door walking out of my building, I drop almost all of my work problems. I try to keep a very clear work-life balance. I try to keep a good disconnect. With COVID and with me now teleworking a couple days a week, it's been much harder. But I definitely try to, like I said, let folks know of, hey, I'm going to be out, and if you've got a problem, there's answers out there, but they're just not going to come from me. Sorry.
Nice. Yeah. That's kind of what I've adapted. You can prepare people. But it's still hard to cut that cord. At least for me. I
still give my boss, like, if there's an emergency 911, you can call me. Very highly discouraged, because I know a lot of people are out there their boss will not recognize that boundary of, oh, you're going to be on vacation. What's the best way to contact you while you're gone? The best way is not. Don't contact me. Come on. And it's even better when you can tell them, like, hey, I just won't have cell service. So
then
go out
there's
in
no
the
choice.
and
Cool.
Yeah, I don't have any more questions. That was great, man.
Yeah. Well, it's good to see you again, Alex. It's been a while. You missed the Foothills Trail, so I think the last time that we actually hung out. Was the rim to rim to rim.
I think we were in that sketchy cave Airbnb Trevor found after the
that
rim
awesome,
to rim to rim.
that awesome.
Oh yes,
Cave
yes,
Airbnb.
that was. Oh yeah, I dropped you off at the Flagstaff Airport.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. We drove 2 hours across Arizona together.
we
road tripped. Hey, we got a road trip together.
We have, yeah. You drove. I appreciate that. But yeah, I think that was the last time we hung out. We did. Trev's bachelor party was hey, let's go for 2 days to Colorado and do everything.
Yeah.
So we summited Bierstadt. We went whitewater rafting. We went brewery hopping. We went to a Rockies game. So that was a fun action-packed 2 days there. But yeah, we're definitely going to have to get together. I know this year, so I'm planning a trip out. So my wife is the one who runs the scuba shop. I don't know if you guys want me telling people that or not, but I think you're going to interview.
You can advertise.
Yeah, I'm making her come on at some point.
Yeah, so she's the one who manages the scuba shop. She for work gets paid to go to Little Cayman or an all-inclusive resort in Cozumel or something like that. Yeah, so I'm like, hey, I'm gonna be taking solo trips. I hope you're cool with that. If you get a chance and you can break away, you are absolutely invited. But if you can't, I'm still going. I love you, but I'm going. So I'm going to go out to Yellowstone and Tetons for 4 days, and then down to Great Basin for a couple days, and then head home.
Nice.
And then hopefully this fall we're going to finally do our honeymoon. We've been waiting until everything in Europe opened up from all the COVID restrictions, so we're going to go Italy and Amalfi Coast and do some scuba diving over near Croatia and stuff like that. So yeah, it's going to be a good year, I think, guys. But definitely next time you guys, Trevor, next time you rope everybody into a trip, definitely keep me on the group chat.
Oh yeah, you're in the group chat. Hopefully we just get our group getting bigger and bigger, because I've got a couple other people I might tag into.
Nice. Yeah. You guys were talking on your first episode. Somebody dropped out last minute, and it was my wife. Well, girlfriend at the time, now wife. But yeah, she was the one who had to bail last minute for work. And that's where I actually got to hang out with Kyle last. So I'm going to have to tell her thank you.
You upgraded. All right, Trev, you want to bring us home?
Vehicle, so that was an upgrade.
Yeah. I feel so used. It's okay.
All right.
She just snuggles better.
All right. I think it's time to bring it on home. Yeah, we'll do all of our plugs and stuff. So, Alex, you want to plug your social media stuff?
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram. I'm at AVP42, number 2. Add me. I'd love to show you guys what I do on my trips and stuff. Because that's pretty much all I look anymore.
What about your TikTok?
I haven't posted any TikToks yet, and I'm debating on whether or not I need to start. I've definitely been that COVID person where I'm laying on the couch for 4 hours going, oh, just one more video, then bed.
Yeah. All right. So my Instagram is at Trevor Bowlman, BOLLMANN. Kyle doesn't have Instagram or any social media, so just keep waving at people named Kyle in Boise. You'll find him eventually.
But if I did have one, I would totally be posting about Microphone Brew Pub in Chicago. I forgot last weekend I went to
Mike. Yeah, that place is awesome.
Yep. Great beer, wonderful sours.
What else we got? Oh, if you want to send us a note, say, hey, you guys say and too much, you need to cut that out, or you know of somebody cool, you can come on the podcast. You can email us at adventuringformeremortals@gmail.com. Our Instagram for the podcast is at meremortalpod. We have a Discord server that I set up. It's all in the show notes. You can get to it there. And since Kyle mentioned my trip website, I'll throw that out there too. If you want to see pictures from our last trips, it's www.trevs-trips.com. And if you like what you hear, rate and review us on any of those podcast apps. So yeah, tell us how great we are. If you like many other podcasts, if you give us a 5-star review, I'll read it here. I don't care what it says. So write us some 5-star reviews and I'll read it on the episode. So that's all I got. So
yeah, and we do listen to feedback.
Yeah, definitely.
We're going to try and make things a little bit longer. There's discussions about perhaps maybe trying to increase the frequency.
Yeah, people don't like waiting a whole month to hear us talk, apparently.
I never thought would happen, but go us.
I need that instant fix, guys. Come on.
Yeah. But yeah, with that, we'll see y'all next time. Talk to y'all later. Bye, Felicia.